Wake me up before you go. Don't leave me hanging on like a yo-yo.
Written and produced by George Michael. Now, the title of the song was Andrew.
Hmm.
He left a note for his parents and said, wake me up before you go. But he wrote go twice. And that's how they came up with the name of the song.
He wrote up twice. He
Up
wrote "Wake me
twice,
up,
up,
up"
up
before you
twice.
go.
Go, go, yeah.
Yes. It's amazing that there's something so stupid like that. Something that
Yeah,
he George just passes by his door and sees as a and that's when you know you're in the zone, is
yeah.
that you can take something so random, and all of a sudden you look at it and you go, here's a note to his parents. And I love the fact that they were so tight that they were, in there, they were friends, they really were a unit, and that's really cool. You hear the stories about them doing like Last Christmas and they were upstairs in that room, and it's just like you love to hear those stories. And he sees a note, and all of a sudden, idea, and not only idea, but I'm sure it all didn't come right away, but idea begets idea, which begets one of the most iconic songs of the decade. It's just that's how you know you really got something, because something so trivial as a note that you just kind of laugh and snicker and put go go on, all of a sudden becomes, hey, wait a minute, and then you're off to the races.
This song was just huge in the 80s. Such an amazing track. The background vocals on this and the brass sections and stuff, the
Hmm.
whole instrumentation is just sublime. It's just such a cool track. I do love Wake Me Up, but has it got to that stage where I'm a bit sort of over it? Probably.
Yeah,
Been on,
yeah,
back in the day, I was blasting it nonstop,
yeah.
Fast forward to now, it's on every bloody 80s playlist.
Yeah, it's such a cliche. I remember when I was a kid, when we were kids, and they would put out albums in the 80s, they'd put out five, six, seven singles.
Mm,
And then you get, down the road, and the radio will only play like the top one. They'll play, Wake Me Up Before You Go Go, and you're like, there's like six singles on that record. Play another one, play a different one. And so I'm with you. I loved it when I was a kid. It was what got me into Wham. And I say this with all the affection in the world. If I never hear it again, I'll be okay. It's kind of one of those deals. And again, I say that with complete love. It's corny in its own way. It's so 1984 in its own way. I love it in its own way, but at the same time, I'm with you. I'm I'm kind of moving on it. If I hear it on a shuffle, it's probably a skip more often than not now. But again, I still love it. It's like your first dog. You still love it,
yeah.
So it's one of those things.
Back in the day when we were buying records, Matt, I mean, I don't know about you, but there was almost some weeks where you think, okay, I've got $5.
Hmm.
I can probably get two singles. So I'm
Hmm.
gonna get these two singles. And then I thought, shit, I gotta get an album. So I might save up some more money, get maybe the album. I remember not having Wake Me Up on single, but I had Make It Big on vinyl, as an
Hmm.
album. But I didn't get the single because there was no sort of, I guess, incentive for me to buy the single. It was just the instrumental, which is like, I
Right.
was a big instrumental fan. I love remixes and stuff. But there was no 12-inch remix of Wake Me Up officially. But
Yeah.
I did discover online that there was a 12-inch version done by the label in the Philippines, and they actually
Interesting.
released it as a 12-inch version. So let's take a listen to that 12-inch from the Philippines right now.
Everything will be alright. You put the boom boom into my heart. You set my soul sky high.
That was a 12-inch from the Philippines of Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. And I've heard the full thing, Matt, and it's almost like a bit of a cut and paste job from the single edit and the instrumental. So even though CBS, Sony back in the day put it out as a 12-inch in the Philippines, I don't think it was an official 12-inch, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's an art to remixing. There's some 12 inches that are amazing. There's some 12 inches that are just kind of like that, where you just kind of stick in extra 4 bars here and there, and you call it a 12 inch, and you put it out for a single. That's kind of a lost art these days. That was kind of a big deal back in the day. Was getting, I would get the CD single or the cassette single or the whatever, the 12 inch,
That
and
single.
yeah, and
Love
uh, and and I love them, and especially when you would see one that does have something. There'd be ones that just an instrumental, and you're like, I don't want to hear that. It's just a song I taped off the radio. Or you get a really cool one that has like 4 mixes, and you're like, holy crap! And those are my favorites. So,
Yeah.
but there's an art to it. There's some George and Wham remixes that are great, and there's some that are kind of like that. They're just kind of there, money grab by the label, I'm sure, in some way. So it is what it is.
I was actually quite surprised there was no 12-inch of Wake Me Up back in the day. But anyway, oh my God, the video. The short shorts, the fluoro, Choose Life t-shirts. I think filming the video back in the day, that would have thought, oh, this is going to be like didn't really think how this would, decades later, be an iconic video. That whole look just worked at the
Yeah.
time and even now.
Well, I've always think that if you look at history of television, video, music, the confluence of all that. If you look at the 50s and the 60s, there was all these like revolutions that came along when TV became a thing. Elvis and the Ed Sullivan Show and the Beatles and all that kind of stuff. But the 80s really kind of brought out the colorful. They brought out the different ways of looking at the visual medium, especially in terms of music. MTV obviously doing a lot of that stuff, and those folks in the early days of MTV were really setting the tone for all that stuff. And it was, can we look glam? Yes. Can we look like mod, guys with the black leathers and all that kind of stuff in '83? Yes. And can we create a visual that is different than what we've seen before? Because the '70s was very boring. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm a kid born in the '70s, but the '70s was boring. And I think that a lot of these folks came out of that. They were young, they were kids of the '70s, and they were hearing, seeing what Elton John was doing on stage, but hearing his music, and they were seeing the singer-songwriter movement and appreciating the music, but it's all very bland. And they just wanted to, when it's our turn, we're coming out guns blazing. And that's why you see the videos that Duran Duran did were groundbreaking. And the videos that Wham did were amazing. And the videos that Madonna did and Prince did and that kind of stuff, they were literally setting the entire tone for the decade with what they were doing, because they knew they didn't want to do what they had been part of before.
Yeah.
So they were changing the culture.
I was always jealous of America when I was a kid because we never got MTV in New Zealand.
Hmm.
So you guys had this amazing sort of music channel. I was just like, oh my God, why can't we get this here? And I had to make do with watching the video just on TV because back in those days we didn't have a video cassette player, a video recorder. So it was like, if you want to watch the show, you got to stay home and watch it. You
Yeah.
can't sort of, it was really organic. And if you couldn't afford the latest single, you'd tape it from the radio.
I was a radio tape in full. We had
Oh,
MTV. We had MTV and we watched that. We had Friday night videos on NBC, which I would religiously watch that. We had Night Flight on a channel called TBS here, which would play videos at night. And my mother comes downstairs and she sees me watching a Duran Duran video, and it's the song Union of the Snake. And she was just like, and my mother she was no stuffed shirt. She was a very hip, my mother was a very progressive mom, and she was like, Union of the Snake, what is that? You can't be watching that. Union of the Snake. And I was like, I don't even know what it means, but it's cool. It's
yeah.
Climb of the Bond. So it was a really cool time, because we were certainly, especially those of us who were watching MTV of that generation, we were trying to just consume all of that we possibly could. And that's why I think it gives us of a certain age. And it's funny you mentioned Make It Big turning 40, and you're like, that thing is 40 years old. Like, where did my life go? But at the same time, I think there's a lot of us at that age who have a kind of a pretty well-rounded love of a lot of music because you did watch it all day long and you did take it all in and it wasn't so algorithm based like it is now. You know, if I was able at 10 years old to watch what I want to watch and only what I want to watch, I wouldn't have seen half the things I saw because I would have just stayed in my lane. I would have been a Billy Joel Wham watching, Fool. And that's all I would have been. And I would have never known that, hey, there's this band called, Def Leppard that you may love and I wouldn't have known. Or there's this whole other thing I wouldn't have known, but we were so into consuming all of that at the same time that it was amazing.
As you said before, there was no algorithm, there was no sort of TikTok 2 minute songs. I mean, this album, Make It Big, 38 minutes, 8 tracks. That just tells you something, right? There's no track I think, less than 4 minutes on this album. And
Yeah.
back in those days, the songs were longer. They were
Hmm.
constructed so much better. It's just,
Yeah, agreed.
yeah.
And
I mean, Wake Me Up. Go on.
song structure is a lost art these days. It's
Oh,
and it's not a bad thing. It's a friend of mine went and saw Maroon 5 in concert last weekend, and I said Maroon 5 does a really great job of traditional song structure. It's verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. Like that's kind of how you do it. That's how you make great
bring me the
songs.
bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, and I said, and that Maroon 5 is very predictable with that, which isn't a bad thing. It's what you do because it gives you the chance to let it become an earworm. It gives it a chance to let it, like George used to say, I had the ability to make these songs that just jump out of the radio. You can do that because you know and you can understand and execute proper song structure.
Yeah. Wake Me Up. What a huge song. Number one in the UK, Ireland, US, Canada, Australia, Belgium, Iceland, Netherlands, Norway, Sweden. Number two, New Zealand and Switzerland. Over 1 billion streams on Spotify.
Yeah.
It just keeps going. It
It
just
does. And the kids today, they know it, they love it. They may not even know who George Michael is, but they hear that song and they start jitterbug and they start singing it. So that's, I think, propelled the streams, which is great. I still want to see the music out there, but you just want to kind of shake a kid and go, just go to the next track on the album. It's so much better. But
But I think the kids don't realize that back in the day, this track sold over 5 million copies. And
mhm,
that's physical units. That's
yeah.
records. That's 7 inch, 12 inch. That's, and now 1 billion streams on Spotify. Just incredible.